I would add that while this all sounds very futuristic, actually this is a long-standing project that's been going on for a considerable amount of time. And I think that's what I wanted to convey today, and which is why I asked Al to come, because I'd like you to give us a background on what is the foundation for data interoperability and XBRL.
I think I'll stand up so I can see everybody, if that's all right. Let me give you a little bit of background on how I got involved in this and what's been going on. First of all, as you know, when XML came in as one of the basic technologies of the internet, it was a major step forward. There was a fellow in Seattle who said, you know, this is a brilliant invention, but it's so flexible, it's so easy to change, so easy to make extensions to, that we need to come up with a structured version of it. So extensible business reporting language was born in one person's mind about 20 years ago. I was working at the NASDAQ stock market. I was president, and I was sitting in my office, and my secretary walked in and said, the chairman of the SEC is on the phone. Well, I always have mixed emotions about getting a call from the chairman of the SEC. It was Chris Cox. He had just moved over from the Congress. I knew him pretty well anyway, and I like him a lot. So I picked up the phone and was asked to come over and meet with him and his staff. And they said, we understand that you've been working on a project to understand extensible business reporting language. Well, what had happened is Microsoft, in the person of Bill Gates, had recognized the power of this Seattle-based accountant's ideas and had come to want to demonstrate it in the Office suite of products as a way of moving data into the Office suites and moving data around in an ecosystem. So a man named Mike Willis came to me. He was a partner at Pricewaterhouse, and he had come to understand the power of standardizing XML and defining vocabularies. And we put up a small demonstration on the NASDAQ website using Microsoft technicians to do the development, using Pricewaterhouse to define the data and be sure all the accounting was right. We put up 20 companies. I called George Scalise, who was running the Semiconductor Industry Association at the time, and said, I didn't need to ask his permission because it was all public data, but I wanted their support. So I said, could I put up 3 years of data for 20 semiconductor companies? And in addition, Cisco heard about it and wanted to play, and Microsoft obviously wanted to play, and Intel sort of led the way. And so we put this demo up, and that's what Chairman Cox had heard about from one of his staffers. And he said, do you think you could do that for the Edgar system? Is there anybody here who doesn't know what the Edgar system is? It's a huge database that all public companies report into, all mutual funds report into. And it was basically a bunch of PDF files. It was pretty modern for its day, 30 years ago. And you could pull up the screen with a document on it and transcribe it yourself into the spreadsheet or Word document you wanted. We wanted to make that flow, and we demonstrated with these 20 semiconductor companies that you could do that. So Chairman Cox said, I want you to volunteer to do this. Pro bono. And I said, in my only defensive comment was, well, how big a project do you think this is? And he said, well, my staff thinks that there are about 5,000 data fields that will define US GAAP. Well, you can almost get 5,000 data fields in an Excel spreadsheet. So I said, I can do that. We'll organize it. Well, to tell you what's happened, we're at 19,000 and counting. The SEC had no clue how complicated it had made the accounting, but we were eager to make it all work. And there was a organization set up. Barry Melanson, who runs the AICPA, had really been shepherding the XBRL movement ahead of time. And the SEC, interestingly enough, was because of the Enron and some of the other accounting issues that were going on at the time, did not particularly want the accounting profession to be seen as the promoter of XBRL at the time. And so we set up a separate, or Barry had actually set up a separate nonprofit that could receive SEC grants. And we began with a lot lot of help from the accounting industry to engage in what became, it's been about a 10-year process to be able to make that system really work. I was honored to be chairman of that effort. A fellow named Mark Bolgiano and a fellow named Campbell Pride and Michelle Savage, who lives out here, among others, have been the real promoters of this. Well, let me tell you a little bit how this fits in the context of the world. Right now, and I'll pass this map around, there are about 50 companies using XBRL, countries. There are over 100 agencies. There are about 10 million filing companies. There are 50 central banks and financial regulators requiring reporting in XBRL. There are 30 stock exchanges requiring reporting. And there are about 30 taxing agencies. And I'll just pass this around, and you all are welcome to look at it. It's very interesting that in our wonderful democracy in the United States, it's hard for us to adopt new things. It's hard to have things change at the government level because we've got all this contention among vested interest in the status quo. The first federal agency to really use XBRL was the control of the currency and the monthly call reports that banks put in. Wells Fargo has to put in its monthly call reports. Every other bank does. The controller of the currency will tell you that the XBRL automation has taken the processing down from about 2 months to about 2 hours. And it made it a much more efficient way to look at things. I think they have a whole review cycle of just a couple of days. So they're able to do that. When Dixon came to me and said that he was interested in getting XBRL, the standardization of XBRL, into the surety industry and therefore the construction industry, I said I'd be glad to try to be helpful with that. And the reason is that I really came to understand the power of standardization. You know, we don't think about how economically advantaged we are to be able to plug something into the wall and get electricity out and use it in a million different ways from that one standard interface with the electric utility industry. There are other standard interfaces, grounded plugs, 220 plugs, European plugs. We haven't standardized around the world yet, but we've got an enormous advantage economically in a large market of having a standard. The other really classic example is railroad gauges. Real economic growth started in this country when the railroad gauges began to be standardized. What we're doing with XBRL is adding another layer, if you're familiar with the OSI stack in computing, where you've got chips and then you've got operating systems, link layer and operating systems and transport layer, all up to the graphic user interfaces. What we're doing is we're adding another layer of standardization, and you'll get all the same benefits of that standardization economically. The problem is a problem of the commons. The problem is who goes first, because there is a front-end expense. And there's no, to use the fax machine analogy, I don't want to buy the first fax machine. I want to buy the 2 millionth or the 20 millionth or the 200 millionth. And so it's this getting this flywheel started that's so interesting. And it's an appropriate role for government, but it's also an appropriate role for the corporate leaders in each industry. And because the language is being standardized and the ancient biblical Tower of Babel problem is being tackled, it's really difficult to get people to say, well, why should I do that? But we're seeing the value of it, and we're so far behind in the United States when we find out every company, public and private in the UK, reports this way. The Netherlands run their entire government on the basis of standardized XBRL languages over and over again. So my point here is to give you a little bit of feeling for the background. This is not that new. It's being done. It's being done in far more advanced ways than other parts of the world. And we have the benefits of this staring us in the face if we can get our act together to get it going.
Thank you, John.